folks, Scourge here, the voice of reason for all seasons. Today I'm going to be talking about consoles, the new dying arcade. You're probably pretty much familiar with what I'm talking about for those who have been keeping up with video games these last 30 years. I used to enjoy arcades as a kid, and nothing brought me more joy than being able to finish one game on one quarter. Of course, that was the trend back then. Then consoles came along, starting off with the Atari, and then, of course, we had the crash of '83. And then after that, we had the Nintendo that brought us back from the brink after the crash of '83. But after that, consoles became the ruling medium at the time. Of course, arcades were still going strong at the same time as well. But up until the mid-90s, when I started seeing the declines, literally the decline of arcades, and it wasn't until the year 2000 when arcades just literally started disappearing across the board. It's an older medium, and people were no longer going to them with the exception of the Chuck E. Cheese franchises, which is mostly kiddie in origin, but I do remember the days when arcades were mostly an adult medium, where we used to go out, hang out with our friends, and be able to, trade secrets, challenge each other, and play two-player games, admire other people as they played their games, and sometimes envy in some cases, but it was always fun. Now that arcades are gone, which is a lost treasure to some video gamers, we see consoles following the same path in that regard. As many probably know, this could very well be one of the last two generations, or one of the last generations of consoles to exist, namely with the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Wii U being the last one. We all know that Nintendo is going to be hooking up a new system called the NX. I suspect it could be possibly the last console in existence, but I could be wrong here. I hope I'm wrong. But from what I've seen of the oversaturation of similar games between PS4 and Xbox One, mostly in the form of first-person shooters, it seems that a possible crash or decline in consoles, much like the arcades, will soon fade into history, and I certainly don't want to see that happen. Although with the rise of smartphones and other mediums of that type, mostly smartphones, whether it be iPhone or Android being my favorite, it seems to be going in that direction. But nothing will ever beat consoles when you can literally play your game with an ordinary controller as opposed to a touch screen. Because you really can't control much with a touch screen. Believe me, I tried. A real console is what you need, especially with the retro consoles like the Retron series and the like. Even Japan is getting another one recently, I discovered, that they're developing one that runs everything from the Nintendo all the way to, the Nintendo, TurboGrafx, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color, all in one. The console is called the Retro Freak, but it's one of the better systems out there that's going to be coming out, especially since it's running Turbo, one of my favorite systems. So retro gaming is becoming very popular because of the lack of variety in the console market right now. There used to be at least a good half dozen systems. Of course, you had the more profile systems, like, say, for example, Nintendo with its SNES, the Sega Genesis, and of course you had the Turbo Duo, and you had the Neo Geo, and then of course later you had PlayStation, the Sega Saturn, and so on. You always had a whole variety depending on the generation to choose from, even in handhelds. Nowadays you only have 3 choices, and I miss those days when you had at least 4 or 5 choices, even the more obscure systems that didn't do too well, like the Amiga systems, the CDI, which of course is not saying much, but at least you had various choices of systems. Now you just don't have that anymore. So it may be going the way of the arcade from ages past, and when that happens, smart devices will take over, and, well, as an old classic gamer myself, I'm not crazy about that, but it's something we may all have to adapt to. How do we deal with this? Well, we can always reminisce about consoles and buy all the retro consoles that are coming out now that play multiple systems in one, at least to show the kids how games were always played in the past, because that's important. You never forget your history, because not everything is first-person shooters, kids. But at one point, you had to run a character across the screen and do different tasks to win a game, and find secrets, and decipher codes, and do all sorts of unusual things. It wasn't always just something you would go straight and shoot someone. So these are the things that no one really should forget when it comes to games. So what say you out there? Do you think that consoles is on the way out like arcades, which pretty much is a shame? Will this be one of the last two generations of video games as far as consoles is concerned? I certainly hope not. And don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and share my video. See you later.